When you think about it clearly, what movie/TV show do we owe for making the idea of superheroes with a twist actually cool? Some modern examples being the two biggest shows on Amazon Prime, being the superhero satire The Boys, and the other being the remarkably made two shows that subvert expectations of what the superhero genre can be after Marvel came in and wrote a whole new way of making them. Sure, these two shows gave the superhero with a twist concept a huge boost in the media, but they for sure were not the first to do this. There are a bunch more movies and TV shows that have used this concept, but one that seems to be forgotten with time yet still widely popular is the 2004 Pixar animated The Incredibles. Now, in comparing Invincible to The Incredibles, there are major differences that first come to mind. Invincible does not hold back on being graphic with its content, and also takes a lot more of a literal and honest turn with how a superhero life would actually be like, plus a whole lot more where that came from. The Incredibles is a movie that has humanity villainizing superheroes and taking action against all their mistakes that they've made, but not realizing the good they've actually done. Now, this video is neither about Invincible nor The Incredibles as a whole, but if you want me to make a video about Invincible's characters or more of the superheroes in The Incredibles, then make sure to do all the cliche stuff YouTubers want you to do to boost engagement on their channels and their videos, and if we get that done, then I would gladly make more. Getting back on track, Syndrome is a villain that was going to get a video at some point in this channel's lifetime, but after rewatching The Incredibles almost 10 years after the last time I watched it, I thought, what the heck, let's do this. Now, there are a lot of different categories that Syndrome falls under when it comes to his villainy, but the most interesting and most closely related to the character is him being a childish villain. I don't think I need to describe what childish looks like, but I need everyone to understand the specific definition of obsession I will be referring to as well, and that is an idea or thought that continually preoccupies or intrudes on a person's mind. This definition, I hope you keep this in mind, is the base structure of what I will be talking about in this video, and how exactly Syndrome from The Incredibles shows us how to write a childish villain. To start this off, we can't even get to Syndrome yet before we talk about Incrediboy. Now, Incrediboy, or his real name being Buddy, started off being a fan of Mr. Incredible and wanted to be his sidekick, but the problem is that he is way too young to be doing this and doesn't have powers himself besides being a tech genius as he made himself rocket boots. The problem with Syndrome's backstory that creates what he becomes was him meeting his hero. Mr. Incredible is correct in the fact that Buddy cannot be doing this, especially when he is really young and doesn't understand that fighting crime is a real deal. Buddy gets ahead of himself and almost dies because of his obsession over Mr. Incredible, since he's so blind to be like him that he doesn't even take into mind that Bon Voyage was even a part of that memory, as seen later when Syndrome starts monologuing to Mr. Incredible, telling him about how his rejection shaped the way he became. He truly lived long enough to see himself become the villain because he idolized Mr. Incredible too much to see that Mr. Incredible is right. Syndrome explains that after Mr. Incredible rejected him, his entire look on life changed, as he believed he's in the right because he was trying to help, even though he didn't understand what he was dealing with, and he also learned that he can't trust anyone, which is one of the biggest parts of his story that tie a lot of stuff together. So let's get into that. On multiple occasions during the movie, we see Syndrome not being able to trust people, but for the remainder of the video, I want to talk about 3 specific instances, so let's start off with Syndrome almost letting Mirage get killed. This scene includes Mr. Incredible threatening to kill Mirage if he wasn't released, and Syndrome responds by not believing he would do such a thing. This shows he doesn't really care about even the people he holds dear. This stems from him not trusting anyone, and it's obvious in the scene. He does not believe Mr. Incredible would do that, so he doesn't release him and gambles on the life of his own girlfriend. He doesn't even bat an eye to his threat, which shows that his obsession over Mr. Incredible shaped his new obsession with becoming the hero he always wanted to be, even if that leaves everybody else behind. Another instance of Syndrome not being able to trust anyone was actually before this scene. While Syndrome was monologuing about his backstory, he brings up how he doesn't think Mr. Incredible is actually sorry for treating him that way, but only saying sorry because now he's a threat. It's like when people don't admit things until they get caught in that action. Syndrome is blinded by his new view on reality that he can't even begin to think why Mr. Incredible told him to go home, and after all these years when he finally apologizes, even though he couldn't let Incrediboy be his sidekick, Syndrome is still oblivious to what he did wrong and blames everything on Mr. Incredible. I'll say this once more, but Syndrome was so obsessive over Mr. Incredible that he doesn't even remember that they were with Bon Voyage during that entire time, but he still doesn't remember Mr. Incredible saving his life by taking the bomb off his cape, but only remembers him saying,
"Fly home, buddy. I work alone."
Not only is Syndrome obsessive with being the superhero he always wanted to be, but he is also obsessive with being right, that he blocks out the reasons why he wasn't and only focuses on Mr. Incredible telling him to go home just because he thinks he doesn't like him. One last instance is during the final fight between Syndrome and his own creation. To paint the scene and to recap you on what happened, Syndrome wants to become the hero, so in order to show himself fully capable of being a hero, he puts the lives of everyone in the city at risk and releases a creation of his own, that he can control, and takes it down to show everyone that he is good enough. The problem is that the AI of his creation that was already defeating other heroes and learning how they fight latched onto the fact Syndrome was controlling it and fully disrupted Syndrome's plan to show everyone that he is the hero. This one was a little bit harder to explain how, so just trust me with this and just stick around and I will explain it to you. Syndrome underestimates the thing he created and pays the price by humiliating himself in front of everyone when his master plan that he's been cooking up fails. At this moment, Syndrome realizes that he can't even trust himself. He just lets the thing that he created beat him and make him look like a fraud of a hero in front of the entire city. His obsession to be the hero backfires, and further doing so makes him unable to trust his knowledge and expertise, which he tries to take out on the Incredibles family, but ends up getting brutally shredded by an engine, all because years ago he was rejected. Syndrome's response towards this one moment in his life led him down a path that was immature and childish. Cursed has something to say, so I'm just gonna let him say it and call whatever is stupid stupid. Well, personally, I think Syndrome is a stupid villain because he's so childish in his way that makes his whole meaning in the movie meaningless. I mean, really? He was rejected when he was a child and now he's a supervillain? Explain how that shows a good villain, Enchanted. Gladly. You see, rejection to anyone is hard and something that takes time to process, but truly it never seems to go away. Buddy's obsession with Mr. Incredible led him down the path that the childish rejection story defined who he was as a person and kept him throughout the movie seeming childish and way in over his head, which is one of the reasons he can't trust himself and also the reason he is defeated in the end because he still considers himself in the right. All those three instances of him not being able to trust anyone all stemmed from his obsession as a child, that only grew stronger and stronger as his obsession grew into something huge. Syndrome is a childish villain in the way it tackles childish obsessions, but that is the reason he succeeds as one, and is Pixar's best villain to a lot of people. Syndrome never was able to grow out of his obsessions because he believed the way to cope with that was to never trust anyone again, and his philosophy kept that vow intact even after years of his life. So calling Syndrome, Incrediboy, or Buddy childish as an insult towards the character is the reason he is so effective. I would also like to add that Syndrome is not a child stuck in an adult body, because if that was the case, I am sure Pixar would have played into that trope that maybe he still likes to play with action figures or something to increase laughability. Syndrome is a serious adult in an adult body who is stuck mentally from fully processing his hero rejecting him. If you have any more questions about Syndrome, please don't be afraid to ask them in the comments. Just make sure I didn't already answer your question that someone already asked. Make sure to go out and check out my second channel because I am now posting on that and you can get extra Enchanted content right over there. So make sure to go check that out. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Comment anything you want. If you think someone you know would like this video, then share it with them as well. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm Enchanted. Bye.